Good morning, everybody. I really felt like I need to make a video this morning, and I've been kind of ruminating over this a little bit. Someone asked me yesterday, why should I keep kosher? So someone who's brought up from left, am I doing something? I said, God doesn't need you to keep kosher. God gave it as a gift to you. It's something you need for yourself, for your soul, for your body, for everything. And I mentioned how Nachmanides says, you are what you eat. When we are eating these, a pig is a very nasty animal. It's an omnivore. The stories go that gangsters will want to get rid of their evidence. They'll feed their victims to pigs because the pigs will eat everything. They'll eat the bones, they'll eat the skin. They eat everything. Pigs will eat people without any. They're man-eating animals. They're really scary, vicious animals if they're not, especially if they're not fed. Usually they're intelligent enough to understand where a food source comes from, and so therefore they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. But all this being said, there are vicious animals, whereas the mammals that we eat are ruminants. And the lesson of eating the ruminants is to digest things slowly, think about it over and over again, and not just rush into something, which is something we have to learn how to do. After the fast last night, I ate some hamburger, and it's interesting how Chazal say that your brain really wakes up from eating beef, and you gain a certain clarity of mind. And so, there were certain things that I think might have even been during the fast, before I was able to really digest that. I'm moving in between the literal and the figurative here, because there's connections to the literal and the figurative in both aspects. But on social media, especially Twitter, sometimes our passions get the best of us, and we'll say things that we shouldn't, and we really need time, and then you have to backtrack a little bit, recognize, well, what did I just say here? Is this something I should have said? Is this something I should not have said? Even if it's true, even if it's right, not everything has to be said. And these are things I have to learn myself. And I apologize to people who are offended. And my blanket statement is not sufficient, that I put on my header, that if you're offended by something I say, assume it's satire or hyperbole, even when there is a kernel of truth in it. We have to find, here's our ruminant friends, there's a whole bunch of cows over here, there's another hill over here, so there's a whole bunch of baby lambs, I think was nearby here also. Maybe we passed by there already, or maybe it's on the next leg of our trip. But we have to figure out how to find that balance. Twice I showed yesterday in my other job, it's coming up this week, the 4th of July, and I came across a video someone sent to me. I've been looking for this video for years and years and years, and then I stopped looking for it, and then it was posted online actually more than a year ago, and if I had kept looking I would have found it. But I mentioned in another video, and someone was kind enough to inform me in the comments section below. I actually asked Vincent Price's daughter about this. There was a TV show called Crossroads in the mid-50s, which was a religious anthology series of stories of American clergymen. And they said it would be pastor, priest, or rabbi every week, a story about a clergyman. And dramatized for television. Vincent Price appeared in, I know, at least 2 episodes of Crossroads that I've seen, and I think he might have appeared in more. And other famous actors, I saw Alan Hale Jr. was in one, who played Skipper later on Gilligan's Island. Maybe he wasn't as famous at that time as he is now. He was a character actor. He wasn't the star of the episode. Other examples like this, and many other. It's not time for me to talk about that, but I was looking for years and years for this episode. I thank the one who sent that to me. There was an episode of Crossroads where Vincent Price plays. His title was technically Chazan. But I have no problem, he used the title Reverend also, but I don't have any problem calling him Rabbi as far as I'm concerned. He's as much, if not more, of a rabbi than I am, and most of the rabbis I know. Rabbi Gershom Sheshes was the spiritual leader of Shearit Yisrael, the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue, the oldest Jewish congregation in America. And his technical title was Chazan, but it was more than just a cantor. It was basically the pastoral, the minister of the synagogue, of the congregation, the rabbi of just as much of a rabbi as most, congregational rabbis in America today. Outside of the historical, and even within the historical context of what a rabbi is supposed to be. And he was a man who was very humble and a man of great Mesiras Nefesh. He was one of the founders of Columbia University, which is mentioned in the beginning of this 25-minute, television episode. And in this episode, Vincent Price plays Rabbi Gershom Sheshes. And the story takes place in 1776, around before and after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So it was really apropos to discover this. Not that I discovered it, but to be given this gift of seeing this episode around this time of year, just around 4th of July. And the message of this short film, this television episode, is a message of peace. And we have to recognize how much we have to eschew violence, how much we have to oppose violence. I was watching last Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night, Rabbi Bart Sadok, koshertorah.com. He was talking about how wrong violence is, among other things, and how important it is for us to build bridges and find commonality with us and other faiths in the midst of being true to ourselves. Very important video, very worthwhile to watch. It's strange how things like this, like the things what he would say, could be considered controversial when they really shouldn't be. and messages of peace, and to have that together with this story, which I don't know how much of the story is historical, but it's a good story. And the message of this show, where Vincent Price playing the rabbi, which just is, it tickles me in a certain way as well, being a fan of old monster movies and stuff. How it's a message of peace in the midst of a war, and I'm going to combine that with a person who I don't really agree with very much, but I am always intrigued by whatever he has to say. I don't remember his name right now. I won't mention his name, but a particular kind of somewhat kooky, conspiracy theorist, rabble-rouser, who's still, I have certain times I find things I do agree with him on, and I find myself intrigued by his teachings, even though I don't necessarily agree with them. And I know one person who I do hold in very high esteem is Glenn Beck, and Glenn Beck does not have very much respect for this particular individual. Just considers him to be crazy. But this person on the internet, I'm not going to mention, mostly because at the moment I don't remember his name, but people probably know who I'm talking about. He's talking about, we know in the Christian tradition, they often, it's brought in the Christian Bible, wars and rumors of war. And how we find ourselves right now in a situation of wars and rumors of wars. And we have to understand that violent rhetoric and violent speech is violence almost as much, and sometimes more than, sometimes less than physical violence. Rhetoric and so forth can be just as dangerous. Where is, we have something to Sean here, and how we have to find that balance, because there is unfortunately a time for peace and a time for war, and we hope always to find ourselves in times of peace and never in times of war. But unfortunately, sometimes there is a time for war, the Bible says. Oh, nothing in there. Oh, here, I got one here. All right. And, I remember a dear friend of mine once told me that the Chavetz Chaim said that the wars of the apocalypse, the wars of Armageddon, what we call in the Jewish tradition the wars of Gog and Magog, which again, as friends of mine point out very wisely, those are in the areas of legend and midrash, even though they are biblically based. And we have a very strong Jewish tradition that negative prophecies do not have to come true. And so we have to understand that the Messiah can come without war. We do not need wars before the Messianic age. Although it's quite possible that there could be. And we pray that there won't be. We find ourselves right now in the midst of the 3 weeks, which some Hasidic literature points out in a very interesting way that if you add up all of the Jewish holidays, it's also 3 weeks. Right? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaroi. Sorry, I was feeling a little hungry right there. I have to pay attention. It's important to keep the body healthy. It's a mitzvah. And after fasting yesterday, it really took a lot out of me, the fast yesterday. And I don't know how I'm going to manage Tisha B'Av. Most likely I'm going to take the day off from work. Even though I'm working serving Jews and ministering to Jews, this year, I don't think I can do it. We're lucky that we're going to have 2 years in a row with the same schedule. There's something important in that. How the actual day of Shavuos B'Tammuz and the actual day of Tisha B'Av fall on Shabbos, and the panemius of those days has been revealed. That we're looking forward to a time of Sason V'Simcha. We're looking forward to a time when these days of sorrow and pain are turned into days of rejoicing and joy, as has been prophesied. The question is, how do we accomplish that? And the major way we accomplish that is by overcoming our violent tendencies, which is very difficult, especially when you're fasting. I know myself, fasting tends to bring out my violent tendencies that I want to get rid of. I'm not generally a physically violent man, but I struggle with mental and verbal violence, and I try, and it doesn't happen so often, but every now and then I'll have some sort of a violent outbreak and outburst, and it'll happen once every couple of years, and I pay for that for years and years, and I regret it. And I really want to overcome that. We all struggle with these type of things, everyone in their own level. And that's why, I myself, I don't trust myself with weapons. But I'm happy when men of peace are armed. Men and women of peace. And by that I mean from the common people, from the civilians who are armed. Not just police officers. I was very, very happy. When I was a rabbi in a synagogue, and there was one person who asked me, is it okay if he carries the gun in the synagogue? I said, yes. It makes us all feel safer. My Zayd Olav Shalom also was a man of peace, but he was always prepared for war. He always had the gun on him. And I myself don't do that, but I do see value in those who do, and that's why I believe that a way to protect liberty is the Second Amendment. I'm really getting off topic here. this being said, so we also have to be prepared in our verbal vocabulary for war. And so I reacted yesterday that someone said that someone on Twitter, I don't know who it was, I don't remember the guy's name, Josh something or other, it is a Jewish sounding name. And he made a statement, Ben Shapiro, a nasty statement against Ben Shapiro. And particularly about what kind of Jew he is. Now the irony is not lost on me, and it's been said time and time again, people accuse Ben Shapiro of being an anti-Semite, of being some kind of a Nazi, and like the irony of a man who wears a yarmulke all day long and appears in public with a yarmulke being called an anti-Semite, there's an obvious disconnect there. And my answer was Ben Shapiro keeps kosher and Shabbos. He's a million times more Jewish than you are, and for that matter, Ivanka Trump is also a million times more Jewish than you are. And someone answered back, Yisrael afal pi shechata Yisrael hu. We all know Chazal say that a Jew, even though he sins, he remains a Jew. I didn't say the person wasn't Jewish. I just said that Ben Shapiro is a million times more Jewish. So this guy is a little bit Jewish, I didn't say he wasn't Jewish at all. But again, it's a little bit of hyperbole and satire to bring out a point, and a true point. But what does it mean to be a Jew? Why is a Jewish... The same person who was criticizing me for this was saying the same thing to other people on other issues. So that irony also is not lost on me. But what is being Jewish all about? And I don't really agree, of course, with the political views of Rabbi Meir Kahane of blessed memory. But and certainly not any violent aspects of his ideology, although he was widely a man of peace, and he was not a racist, and he really called out people on their racism, and that's why they accused him of being a racist. But a point that I have is that being Jewish is a religion. It's not a race. Now, I can say as a religious person that yes, someone who's born Jewish is Jewish. What does that mean? What is the halachic definition? What difference does that make if someone's Jewish or not Jewish? Especially if they don't believe in Judaism. Meaning, if someone doesn't believe in the basic ideas of Judaism, but they're very proud that they're Jewish, well, what point is there in that? I think about, what's his name? Dr. Brown. I don't remember his first name. He always, he's making a big deal. Oh, he's Jewish, he's Jewish, he's Jewish. But he's Christian. He's a very good Christian. I don't have a problem with his Christianity. I have a problem with his Jewish identity. And his conflating Jewishness with his Christianity, when his own scripture as a Christian, the book of Romans, makes it very clear. Galatians also. Throughout the Pauline epistles, in a sense, the theology of Christianity makes it clear that there's no value in him holding on to his Jewish identity as a Christian. And so why does he do it? be honest, it's in an attempt to win over more Jews to Christianity. And if he's honest about that, I don't have a problem with that. If he believes Christianity is a true religion and that's his business, I disagree. I believe Judaism is a true religion. And he believes Christianity is a true religion, and that's fine. There's a lot in common between Judaism and Christianity. There's more that unites us than divides us. And we can agree to disagree. And we can even have a certain level of fellowship with that. My problem with him is not even his missionary zeal to win souls to his side, but his intellectual dishonesty of conflating Jewishness and Christianity, which are two different things. I wasn't planning to talk about this. But the same is true. The reason I bring this up is because it's the same with other ideologies that are foreign to Judaism, that are much further away from Judaism than Christianity is. And yet most people who, according to halacha, Dr. Brown is Jewish, which means that according to Jewish law, he's supposed to return to Judaism. And yet he's embraced Christianity. This being said, the same thing, Michael Brown is his name, right? But the same could be said, I think much, much more so, with people who are waving the flag of Jewish identity, but are atheists, and are Soni Hadas, and are fighting actively against religious freedom, against religion, and then having the chutzpah to use, and also out of ignorance. And I don't like to say this because I'm supposed to be humble. I saw someone, they came along and they said, ransom, how important is for us to ransom the kids who came across the border? And my answer, and they're quoting from Maimonides. Look, I can find a quote from Maimonides, even though they don't even actually bring the quote. They're just saying Maimonides said it. But the fact of the matter is, first of all, halakha is not a rigid system. Halakha means movement. Halicha zolam lo. Al tikra halicha zela halachas. The word halakha indicates movement. It's not a stationary thing. But there are certain parameters. And we can have an honest discussion about the halachic issues, and so I can also bring another halachic answer. Also, Maimonides brings this as well. This is a person who has no interest in what Maimonides has to say about keeping kosher or keeping Shabbos or Taras Mishpacha. But when it comes to if he can use it, and this person obviously doesn't care about the plight of these children who are separated from their parents, because if they did, they would have spoken up about the 90,000 kids that were separated from their parents under President Obama's administration. And so all of this is this political grandstanding, and there's really no reason to even engage a person like this. But that being said, he could answer back just the same, ransoming the captive, so forth. But the thing is, if a parent makes a decision to do something which is illegal and foolish and dangerous, we're not supposed to ransom their children, or at least not until the father has passed away, because we're enabling them. Again, these are issues of halakha. These are not rigid. These are discussions we can have within the oscillating consciousness, as Rabbi Bar Tzadok says, of halakha. But you can only really have a discussion like this with someone who takes these things seriously and is being intellectually honest, not with someone who's just using it as an excuse to insult the president, which is also a sin. You know, I mean, I got very, very angry yesterday. Again, I'm fasting, but I'm listening to the radio, and this guy, Alan Shartok, I can't stand him. And he's like calling the president, I can't even say, to call the president Hitler, to call his supporters Nazis. Do you know who Hitler was? Do you know what Nazism was about? And I can bring, which I agree with, the Dinesh D'Souza arguments that the left, that Nazis were really left-wing, and that the Nazis have much more in common with the Democrats than the Republicans. And it's true, everything Dinesh D'Souza is saying. The problem is, when you say things like this, people shut down. And I have zero regret supporting Dinesh D'Souza, just because he retweeted something that had a hashtag burn the Jews, and everyone's making a whole big deal about this, and just to discredit him when he's not an anti-Semite. And I myself, you know, if there's a cause that I want to promote on Twitter, I'll just, you know, I'll keep retweeting. I don't mind. And sometimes, yeah, I might not notice, especially the fact of the matter is on Twitter, sometimes there's like a lot of things, and like you don't even see the whole tweet when you're retweeting. And especially when you're retweeting quickly. But the chutzpah to compare the president to Hitler when his own daughter is Jewish? I mean, it upset me a lot. But I have to find a peaceful way to answer these things. This is really what I wanted to talk about. And let's say, remember I was talking about this guy on YouTube and all these wars and rumors of wars, and this claim that on the 4th of July is going to start a civil war. God forbid. And how the left is planning to attack us. And the fears that are involved with that, and how do you deal with that? How do you find peace? And I think this story of Rabbi Sheshes, which you should look it up, it's called The Rebel on the TV show Crossroads. To find what it means to be a person of peace, even amidst war. It's very, very important. And so we should be worthy to that, and God willing, inner peace. This is where the real war is going to be. I didn't finish the story what my friend said about the wars, the apocalyptic wars, the wars of Gog and Magog. The Chavetz Chaim said that the war of Gog and Magog will be a spiritual war and not a material war. And the proof of that is that when people hear that it's going to be spiritual and not material, they tend to feel somewhat relieved. And if we knew what the spirit was, we would not feel relieved when we hear that. So the Chavetz Chaim teaches. Let's think about that, and let's hope that, therefore, that we don't have to deal with any wars, and that we can find inner peace, and then that peace should spread. Excuse me. That peace should spread through everything that we need in life. Alright, God bless you. Peace be with you. You know, God's name is peace. One time in the Bible, in the book of Judges, it says Hashem Shalom. Shalom is the name of God. Let's not take the name Shalom in vain either. And in a sense, Shalom is also an ineffable name, which means it's something we have to find in our hearts, because it's not enough just to talk about it, but to live peace and find perfection and wholeness and peace. God bless you.